Magnus Infernum.
Clinging tightly to the frigid mountainside, the adventurous party inched their way around the last bend, eyes flaming from the frosty winds. Now the mouth of the lair is in view. The narrow ledge leads the adventurers just a little too high. They leap to solid footing. For the cleric, scout, and shaman, they glide down with ease. The wizard stumbles forward on his landing, the icy winds masking the sounds of his folly. Crack! The soldier squatted down, with both feet firmly rooted to the ground, shale broken in the visage of a spider's web underneath the weight of his armor. A heavy bellow from deep within the cave shakes the mountain. Blast of heat billows from the cave. A pungent stench of vinegar and sulfur assails the air. Without warning, out bursts a hordeling of 3 goblins from the cave's gaping maw. Roll for initiative. Greetings, this is Magnus Infernum, and it is a good thing that I don't write books, because readers would just get an eyeful of adjectives. Anyways, surprise surprise, another tribal deck tech. But this one isn't just any tribal deck tech, it's 2 tribal deck techs. Goblins and Dragons. Now, I know I say that these decks are great and amazing for casual and multiplayer games, but this one is amazing for casual 1 versus 1 and multiplayer games. And the tactic is simple. Flood the board with goblin tokens and summon mid-range dragons. So let's kick open some doors, looking for trouble. 4 Dragon Fodder and 4 Krenko's Command. Both cards are 1 generic and 1 red mana. These 2 red sorceries read, put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. Then there are also 4 Hordeling Outbursts, a red sorcery for 1 generic and 1 red mana. Put 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield. It is really easy for this deck to have anywhere from 3 to 5 goblins out on the field by turn 3. But there is even one more goblin token maker that you would want a 4 of in the deck. Mogg War Marshal. A goblin warrior for 1 generic and 1 red mana. This 1/1 creature has an echo cost of 1 generic and 1 red mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, sacrifice it unless you pay its echo cost. When Mogg War Marshal enters the battlefield or dies, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token onto the battlefield. Mogg War Marshal can be a little clunky, but it can be viewed as a Hordeling Outburst that you get over time for 2 mana. Either way, all of these cards apply some early game pressure. There is one last goblin that helps transition into dragons, Dragonlord's Servant. A 1/3 goblin shaman for 1 generic and 1 red mana. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less to cast. Play 4 of this goblin. It has more defensive capabilities than the other goblins, and it lets you cast the dragon creatures earlier. Speaking of dragons, put 4 of Thunderbreak Regent into the deck. For 2 generic and 2 red mana, you get a 4/4 dragon creature with flying. Whenever a dragon you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Thunderbreak Regent deals 3 damage to that player. Not only do you get a 4/4 with a mana cost of 4, or potentially 3 if you have one Dragonlord's Servant out in play, but this creature will punish the opponents for casting spells or using abilities to deal with the dragons of the deck, as opposed to having creatures take them on. Really, this is an affordable and brutal card for the deck. Red historically has had issues with running out of cards in hand. With 4 Avaricious Dragon in the deck, you are guaranteed to have no hand, but draw an extra card each turn. A 4/4 flying dragon creature for 2 generic and 2 red mana. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. Avaricious Dragon is either the last card you play in hand, or second to the last. While it is tempting to get a 4/4 dragon that draws you an extra card each turn, it is easier to play this later in the game when your hand is almost empty. The last dragon in the deck has a weird but powerful way to synergize with the goblins in the deck. Voracious Dragon. Wow, first Avaricious Dragon, and now Voracious Dragon? These dragons just can't get enough. Anyways, play 3 of this 4/4 flying dragon for 3 generic and 2 red mana. Devour 1. As this enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature enters the battlefield with that many +1/+1 counters on it. When Voracious Dragon enters the battlefield, it deals damage to target creature or player equal to twice the number of goblins it devoured. So pretty much later in the game, with the goblin tokens no longer being able to optimally attack the opponent, play Voracious Dragon to get rid of them, making the dragon more powerful and dealing a serious amount of damage to an opponent or their creature. While this card normally is played later in the match, you could optimally play Dragonlord Servant on turn 2, Hordeling Outburst on turn 3, and then play Voracious Dragon on turn 4. Since the Dragonlord Servant makes the dragons cheaper to cast, devour all 4 goblins in play. Then you have an 8/8 flying dragon that hits a creature or player for 8 damage when it enters the battlefield. All this on turn 4. Moving on to Sarkhan the Dragonspeaker, a Sarkhan legendary planeswalker for 3 generic and 2 red mana. It starts off with 4 loyalty counters. The +1 ability states, until end of turn, Sarkhan Dragonspeaker becomes a legendary 4/4 red dragon creature with flying, indestructible, and haste, that doesn't lose loyalty while not a planeswalker. -3 ability. Sarkhan the Dragonspeaker deals 4 damage to target creature. And the ultimate ability for -6, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your draw step, draw 2 additional cards. At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. So in some strange way, Sarkhan is a temporary indestructible Avaricious Dragon that can bathe in Dragonfire a creature. Sarkhan the Dragonspeaker has options and can help assault the enemy, but is a little more expensive to cast than most of the cards in the deck, so I only run 2 of this planeswalker. The deck rounds out with Draconic Roar, a red instant spell for 1 generic and 1 red. As an additional cost to cast Draconic Roar, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. Draconic Roar deals 3 damage to target creature. If you revealed a dragon card or controlled a dragon as you cast Draconic Roar deals 3 damage to the creature's controller. With 11 dragons in the deck, 13 if you count Sarkhan becoming a dragon, it is really easy to take advantage of Draconic Roar. It works early game to clear a path for the goblin tokens, and it could help finish off an opponent late game. Put 4 of these in the deck. Now for the pure and simple land base. 23 mountains. That's it. This is a fast 1-color deck. Having non-basic lands that enter the battlefield tapped will hinder the deck more than it could help. This deck runs cheap goblin tokens and cheap yet powerful dragons, and there is not many cards that fit the bill that would mesh well with this deck. The only alteration that I would suggest for this deck is removing 2 Sarkhans, 1 Voracious Dragon, and 1 Avaricious Dragon, and throwing in 4 Magmatic Insight. A sorcery for 1 red mana. As an additional cost to cast Magmatic Insight, discard a land, draw 2 cards. Even though the deck is running 23 lands, they do have a bad habit of showing up too much. With Magmatic Insight in hand, you could get rid of the lands to get a second chance at 2 more cards. So if you don't like being completely dependent on Avaricious Dragon's ability to keep up your spellcasting, this sorcery can help. One of the best things about this deck, it only costs about $25, with Sarkhan the Dragonspeaker and Thunderbreak Regent costing at most $2 each. Avaricious Dragon and Voracious Dragon costing less than $1 each, with no non-basic lands helping keeping the deck price down. This deck can put up a fight without knocking out your wallet. What do you think about the deck? Is this the kind of deck you like to play, or would you prefer a deck with more versatility? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, then press the like button. If you found the video displeasing, then press the dislike button. Bolt that subscribe button to stay up to date with future videos. This is Magnus Infernum. Till we meet again.